Let's get to the day. So Boston Marathon, I got seated into wave two. So with the pregnancy and postpartum deferral policy, they do use your original qualifying time to seed you, which is great.
Welcome to the Hollyfield Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Holly Samuel, and I'm a registered dietitian, board certified in sports nutrition. I'm a certified personal trainer, and I have my master's in health education focusing in eating disorders. And on the Hollyfield Nutrition Podcast, we provide you with the nutrition knowledge for all things running, endurance sports, preventing injury, burnout, and more. I'll interview everyday runners and athletes making it happen, just like you, along with various professionals and experts in the nutrition space. We'll chat about experiences as a runner, how nutrition and fueling impacts training, performance, and your overall health, and of course, adjustments you can make to be the best runner and healthiest version of yourself that you can be. Let's get into the episode.
Well, hello, and welcome to the show. We're here to recap my third Boston Marathon 2025, which is my ninth overall marathon. It'll be my first postpartum marathon, and I have so many thoughts, and I'm like wondering how many times I'll cry during this episode. But we are freshy fresh right off the Boston Marathon 2025. It's Tuesday, the day after Marathon Monday. So I wanted to record this while it was all really fresh in my mind and my legs. I have never been so sore after a marathon in my life. I know I'm a little far removed from it. It's been 2 years since I've run a marathon. So some of it I think is just, being a little bit removed from the pain cave, but I'm quite sore, which really tells me I did indeed leave it all out there on the course. So let's recap this race. And of course, in order to do that, we got to start from the beginning. So I really joke, but it's true that I started training for this race as soon as I crossed the finish line of the Boston Marathon in 2023, because that is the race that I used as my qualification time to get into this race. As many of you know, I ended up getting pregnant really shortly after the Boston Marathon in 2023 and used their pregnancy and postpartum deferral policy. I had my son, Owen, in January of 2024. I know people do it, but really wouldn't have been smart for me to run a marathon at like 3 months postpartum. So I ended up deferring that race entry into Boston Marathon 2025. It is an amazing thing that they have this policy. I think it's just going to help women and people who have kids just like make smarter decisions for their bodies. I couldn't imagine running a marathon at 3 months postpartum. Horrible idea, in my opinion, for most people. Even like walking a marathon that soon postpartum, not good in terms of longevity in the sport and keeping your body and central nervous system intact. So was very, very grateful to use that pregnancy and postpartum deferral policy. If you want to learn about how that works, if those of you listening have used it or are thinking of using it in the future, I was just really, really grateful that it exists because I was excited to return to my first marathon postpartum at the Boston Marathon. And be able to use that qualification time that I had because they ended up lowering the standards even more. So I'm perpetually stuck in the 18 to 34 age group. So the youngest age group with the hardest standards because I started, running when I was about 20 or 21 years old. So I've just been perpetually stuck in this age group. So when I first was wanting to like run marathons and like think about qualifying for Boston, I think my age group, it was like a 340. The first BQ I ran, the standard was a 335 and now it is a 325 to run. And we all know that actually you probably want to run like a 320 or faster just to have that buffer to actually get into the race because they still keep only lowering the standards by 5 minutes. So it's this illusion that you get in, but we all know how that goes. I've actually been rejected from the Boston Marathon despite qualifying 3 different times. So I know a lot about how that feels. So I kind of knew going into this experience that, okay, to requalify for the Boston Marathon, it's going to be even harder. It's essentially running a PR for me. My PR is a 3:19, which I ran at the Boston Marathon in 2023. So the pregnancy and postpartum deferral policy essentially works. I believe if you're pregnant at all, you can get a doctor's note, or if you are, I think it's within 6 months postpartum. You have to double check me on that. I think they might use weeks, but it's about 6 months postpartum. That's what they consider postpartum in order to qualify to use this policy. So at 3 months postpartum, I totally qualified to use this policy. And what they basically have you do is apply to run in the um, 20, no, they don't have you do that. You basically don't apply in like the qualification application process, but they reach out to you because you basically just have to reach out to them and say, hey, I want to use this policy. It's all on their website. I'm just going to botch this a little bit, but it is all on their website. Just Google Boston Marathon pregnancy postpartum deferral policy and the instructions will come up. But you essentially reach out to them and then they reach back out to you after all of like the applications have gone through. And you essentially tell them that you want to do this. They say great, and you have to let them know if you want to defer either 1 year or 2 years by February 1st of the first potential year you could run. So by February 1st of 2025, that's when I had to let them know, hey, I'm going to run the 2025 race. And if I didn't let them know, then they would assume I was going to run the 2026 race. I, in my pre-kids mindset, was like, 1 year will be plenty with this timeline that I have because I knew I'd be about 15 months postpartum. I had planned to be done breastfeeding around a year if it, worked out that way for me because I didn't really want to run a marathon, especially race a marathon while breastfeeding. From working with enough moms, I know how metabolically taxing breastfeeding is on the body, and I didn't want to have to deal with pumping and like all of that. I know many people who do deal with that, and you're warriors. I saw one mom on the course who had a hand pump in her belt that she was running with because they don't have lactation support on course at the Boston Marathon. They only have it at the start and finish. Champions. I did not want to do that, but that does not mean you can't do it. You are absolutely amazing if that is something you did. Anyway, I kind of was like, I think 15 months postpartum, like deferring 1 year, I think that'll be enough. I think I'll really have FOMO if I don't try at least to do Boston 2025. But I really left it down to the wire. Like I did not make this decision officially and tell them that I would be running Boston 2025 until like the very end of January. And I promised myself when I discussed this decision, no matter what my outcome was of the race, whether I PR'd, smashed it out of the park, or totally blew up, I would tell people that my advice for moms who are looking into using this policy is to defer 2 years. Yes, I deferred 1 year. No, I do not regret it. However, if I were to ever be in this situation again, I think I would defer 2 years because it doesn't mean that you can't do it if you only defer 1 year postpartum. But what I was left with was a bit of like buyer's remorse where I was like, did I make the right decision? Should I have done two? Is one going to be okay? Is my body going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? Is my son going to be okay? And I kind of was like, in the future, I probably would just do two because then at least you've given yourself the max amount of time that's allowed. You can always run a different marathon at 1 year postpartum if you're feeling amazing and great. Then maybe you get into a future Boston Marathon race. But my advice would be to defer 2 years. It won't hurt you to defer 2 years. It could potentially hurt you to only defer one, even though plenty of people are totally ready to do it at 1 year postpartum. But give yourself some time, give yourself some grace. I don't have any regrets. It worked out great for me. I'm very thankful for all the support that I had. And that being said, I don't think it would have hurt to defer 2 years. And probably if I were in the situation again in the future, I would probably defer 2 years. So that being said, I did not defer 2 years this time. I only deferred one. So by the end of January, I was like, all right, we're doing the thing. I bought the jacket that I'm wearing and I was like, let's go. I was working with my same running coach and strength coach, Kim Nadeau, who's been on the show and will be coming back on the show very soon. She's trained me for 2 Boston marathons, so many PRs, pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, postpartum. My coach is amazing. I'm so grateful for her, and just her lived experience is helpful as a mom. So she trained me for this. We kind of approached it with a similar approach to previous years. Knowing that I'm under more stress now, right? Like recovery is as good as I can make it, but it's not what it was before I had kids. I do not have sleep autonomy. There are going to be nights where we don't sleep well, and that's not really in my control. I was breastfeeding for the majority of her coaching me in this past year. Um, I was under a lot of, stress trying to figure out postpartum and mom life and juggling a business and doing projects in the house and all kinds of stuff, right? So we kind of were like, all right, well, we're definitely not going to do like much more than we've done in the past because that probably wouldn't set me up for success. But we did want to approach the training like, let's see if we can really squeak out a great performance, maybe a PR. But my postpartum experience, I know I've given like little updates along the way in my Q&A episodes throughout 2024. But I really had a great return to run experience postpartum. I had a pretty uncomplicated delivery. I went to pelvic floor PT. I saw my regular sports PT. I mean, so consistently. I did the work. I joke that I've been training for this race since I crossed the finish line of the Boston Marathon 2023. I really tried to take care of my body during pregnancy, really tried to take care of my body in the rehab process postpartum, and really did treat it like a job because I wanted it to go well and I wanted it to be relatively efficient. I do want to emphasize that you do not have to do that. You can take your time. Not everyone's going to have access to the same resources. Not everyone's going to have the same experiences in pregnancy and postpartum. Some people can exercise, some people can't. Some people have really complicated deliveries with a lot of trauma, others don't. Some people have a lot of support, others don't. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. But again, I did try to take this very seriously, and I did have a very good experience returning to run postpartum with not really many complications. When things started to get a little funky for me, which again is why this whole time I was like, yeah, defer 1 year, no problem, because running was going well. My volume was back to where it was by the summer after I gave birth. I was able to do speed workouts that were like some of the hardest speed workouts I've done. I was supposed to train for and run a couple 5Ks in the fall. I ended up not running them because of what happened to me, which was basically that my back started to act up. I've got some central nervous system back tension stuff that I've dealt with for a decade that my PT is really helpful with. And it started to act up a lot in the late fall of 2024, which did kind of make me go, oh, actually, is running a marathon in the spring a good idea? Should I defer more? I don't know. I've dealt with this before, but it's kind of lingering, and hemmed and hawed over it a lot. But I went to PT. And I basically didn't do any speed work through the winter. I backed off my mileage a little bit. And just tried to keep showing up best I could and really focus on the recovery process and building my strength back. And by February, it really started to come together. I wasn't dealing with back issues anymore. I was able to do speed work again. It was really clicking. I was like showing really epic fitness. I was doing some of the hardest marathon training workouts I've ever done. We did end up traveling a little bit more in March, and I did get sick for like 2 weeks. We all got a sinus infection from visiting friends who have small children. And things just didn't feel great after that, which was like the peak of marathon training. Like I could do it. I was getting the workouts done, but it wasn't feeling like as easy as it was before I got sick. And, I don't know if that was just cumulative training fatigue combined with being sick. It was just a lot of mental stress trying to, do all the things essentially. So basically, my coach and I really approached it as I've thrown down some workouts where I could very much be in PR shape for the Boston Marathon. How's that going to shake out, with the weather and, all of the uncontrollable factors? We don't know, but like, let's set ourselves up for potentially a PR race. So that was really my mentality going into this. I also really wanted to take the pressure off of myself, especially just going back and forth on whether to defer 1 or 2 years. It was like you made the decision to defer only 1 year, so you just got to show up at this race and do your best and try to have a good experience. Like, don't put so much pressure on yourself. And yes, your fitness is there, but again, try not to be so disappointed, like if you don't blow it out of the park, because give yourself some grace, Holly. You're 15 months postpartum. Um, Another really complicated experience for me that I'm sure so many moms can relate to that I wanted to share is that with weaning from breastfeeding, in my like naive, what not really naive even, like I had heard a lot about this. I do think we should talk about it more because there's not enough people talk about it. But in my naive mind, I was like, I will be done breastfeeding and then I will train for a marathon and it will be much easier to train for a marathon when I am not breastfeeding, which was true. And I underestimated the weaning process and the toll it can take on your hormones and your mental health. I had a pretty good breastfeeding experience. I got my period back very early postpartum, despite exclusively breastfeeding, like 4 or 5 months postpartum, and it was regular. And I kind of didn't know like how weaning would affect me because I knew my hormones were hormoning, if that makes sense. Um, and wow, yeah, it really affected me mentally postpartum. And I don't think enough people talk about like postpartum mental health, depression, anxiety. I think we're getting better at talking about it like in the initial, like fourth trimester, initial postpartum, but I don't think we talk about it enough in the year plus because it can absolutely hit you in those moments too. Especially because there can be, yeah, just like physiological factors that are different. Like if you're weaning from breastfeeding at a year or even 2 years postpartum, like that's going to change the makeup of your hormones and therefore how you're feeling. So that was a big transition for me. And it wasn't that I was like sad to be done breastfeeding. That's not how it really felt. I was quite looking forward to being done breastfeeding. It's bittersweet. I won't, I don't want to understate that because it is bittersweet, but my anxiety really kicked up and it had really like the thoughts I was having were nothing to do with breastfeeding. It was more to do with like any anxious or intrusive thought I've ever had in the past was like it was like there was a microphone and the volume was all the way up and it was really hard. And also like I just wasn't recovering as well from my workouts. Like my central nervous system was just really flared. Like this is like kind of where the peak of like my back tension and some of the stuff I was experiencing in the neural pathways was like really kicked up. And it's funny too, because some of the physical therapy interventions that typically worked really well for me, like dry needling, it was almost like making it worse because like my body was just like, whoa. Um, so that was tough. I felt very inflamed in all the ways. And this was around the time I was going to have to make like a decision around the marathon. And it got so much better though. So if you're going through this or if you have gone through this, like it did get better. It was really hard. I said I was going to cry a lot during this episode. Here we go. um, but no, really, I really had to lean a lot on my village and my support system during this time. I started working with a therapist again, and it was just my husband was so supportive. My coach was so supportive. My physical therapist was so supportive. Um, so yeah, it was hard. But it did get really better. And about like 2 to 3 weeks after I was totally done breastfeeding and everything had like started to calm down, like I noticed physically how much better I felt. Because I could go do my long runs or my workouts and like just recover like normal. Like I started to feel like myself, which I thought I had felt like myself. And again, it kind of waxed and waned, I think, throughout the year of breastfeeding, just because you wean a little bit, every time like they drop a feed or you start solids, like, and I would notice a little bit of like an ebb and flow in my mental health or my central nervous system, but nothing like being at the end. And like I did this all very gradually. I'm me, I'm by the book. Like we weaned gradually. Like I read instructions, I worked with my lactation consultant, and it was still tough. So but about 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe after that, I did start to notice like, oh, physically I feel better. And then mentally I started to feel better. Clearly it's, still an emotional thing to talk about, but um it was huge. And it just started to come back into focus that like I'm back and I can run and I can run fast and then I can recover like I'm used to recovering. And this metabolic tax in my body is gone, which is huge, which is what I was hoping would happen. I just really, I think, underestimated like the brief in between period where it was really hard. Um, so essentially, I just want to say that all of this to say, making it to the Boston Marathon. I know people reading like my brief recaps on Instagram or following me who are moms or want to be moms or are currently in the postpartum process. Um, I just, I really want to provide context because I think it's easy to say, look at me go. I ran a marathon, around a year postpartum, and I ran my third fastest ever marathon. And, you know, look how awesome that is. And it is. We're going to celebrate that. I'm going to celebrate that for a while. But I also want to add context that I have childcare, I have a supportive spouse. I work for myself. I work from home. I have a flexible schedule. Um, I have a great village. I have resources to pay professionals to help. Um, and yeah, I'm tough and I did the work and I put in the time and all that. But again, if I didn't have childcare, if I didn't have a supportive spouse, if we didn't both work from home, if I didn't work for myself, if I didn't have the means to pay for professionals to help me, like my physical therapist, etc., no, this would not have probably come together how it did. So I just want to really provide the context for that. I think that's really important because I think it's really important to share different experiences like pregnancy, postpartum experiences, because you can gain a lot of inspiration from people. I know I have, and it's been really helpful to read other people's stories. And and I think it's really important to give context because not everyone's going to have the same experience. And if you return to running immediately or you wait a couple years, you take a couple years off from running, there's no right or wrong way to do this. You really just have to be good at listening to your body. Show up and do the work when it's appropriate to do so, and also sit back and sit down and focus on other things when it's important to do so. Um, so I just really want to emphasize that because I have a lot of moms following me who are probably like, man, why can't I do that? And I want you to know that you're doing great. um, okay. So let's get to the day. So Boston Marathon, I got seated into wave two. So with the pregnancy and postpartum deferral policy, they do use your original qualifying time to seed you, which is great. I kind of thought they weren't going to do that because when I applied, it said no qualification time given. And I was like, oh, am I going to be in wave four? Which there's nothing wrong with wave four, but it would probably affect my goals a little bit if I'm starting, in a slower corral. Just because the beginning of the marathon's so crowded, no matter what corral you're in. So I was a little bummed thinking that would happen, and then it didn't. They do seed you based off your time. So I got put in wave two. I've never started in wave two before. I've always started in wave three, corral one, which is awesome. It's great to be in corral one because you're at the front and there's not much crowd to have to weave in and out of, which is really nice. But this time I got to start in wave two, which was also great because it's a little bit earlier and it was a little bit of a warmer day out there, as you can see from like my sunburn on my face. But I was in corral seven out of 8 corrals. So the start was a little different this time around, but wave two, corral seven this time, super grateful. And the day itself, we kind of took a similar approach to past Boston marathons. Me and my husband, we went into the city on Saturday to get my bib and do the expo and meet some of you. Um, and then we went home to New Hampshire, which is about an hour from the city, and got to sleep in my own bed. And we went down to a hotel on Sunday night after dinner just to kind of be in the city for the start. Cause I was kind of thinking I'd maybe want to try driving in for the start the day of, but then I chickened out and got nervous. So we ended up getting a hotel um, in like the Fenway Back Bay area. So we drove down Sunday, stayed in a hotel, and got up and found the buses. The buses this time around were, I think, a little behind, backed up. I don't know. It was my third Boston, and it has not quite been this crowded or backed up before. I also have not been in wave two before, so I wasn't super sure. And talking to other people who have done like, I was around people who have done like 20 Boston marathons. They were like, what is going on this year? It's so crowded. So I don't know if the buses got backed up in wave one or something happened. I don't really know what happened, but just noting here, seemed a little bit crowded behind. Like we were supposed to board the buses around 7:30 and we didn't until like after 8. So it was just a little bit behind. There's definitely more traffic driving to it. It took like over an hour to get to Athletes Village, when usually it's more like 40 minutes or so. Um, so just a little bit backed up. A little bit rushed, which is fine, but just noting here for future years to maybe arrive early if you're someone who likes to have more time. um, the first year I ran was kind of like this. It was a little bit like, okay, I don't really have time to do anything except for what I have to do. The second year was was a lot quicker. I had time to like sit around, which was kind of a bummer because it was raining. And this year was a little bit rushed. I was so excited because I had quite a few clients running this year. I had clients running from all over the world. I had clients with all different kinds of goals. I had several clients running their first Boston marathons, which is always just the best. You want people to have a good experience. Because Boston Marathon's so special and it's so hard to get there no matter how you've entered. And I was just really, really excited for all of my clients. I did not actually really see any of them, which is a bummer. I tried to, but it just didn't work out. I was hoping I would have more time in Athletes Village to maybe find people because a lot of my clients were starting in wave two with me. But I saw none of them. So if you're listening to this, I know we probably talked already, but good job kicking ass out there. You all did so great, even if it was a harder day. Um, and I was really trying to focus on that. And then in the buses, I was so excited because a professor from the University of New Hampshire, who I did not have as a student, but I participated in some of her research studies as an adult, because she does a lot of research on runners, and she's an exercise physiology professor, and she lives in my town. I see her running all the time. I never know if I should say hi or not when she's out running and I'm out running because I don't know if she knows who I am because I only had met her like a couple times and it was in the context of like doing a VO2 max test for her studies, where I wasn't super chatty. So I like kind of knew who she was, but she recognized me actually in the crowd and was like, Holly. And I was like, I know you. What is your name? And she was like, Summer Cook, UNH. And I was like, oh my God, yes. And we ended up riding the buses together and going in Athletes Village together. We were in the same corral and I ran with her a little bit on the course. And I got to talk to her for like 2 hours and make a friend. And it was amazing. She's amazing. I can't remember what Boston Marathon it was for her. It was like in the teens. She's a very accomplished runner, and her daughters run. One of her daughters is volunteering to help the elite athletes and their families, which is so cool. And she was telling me all about the research that she's participated in, the research that she's doing for runners, some of the students she's had that I have interacted with because they were heading the research that I did, and where they're at in life. And if any of them are listening, you guys are awesome and we need you in this field, as med students and future exercise physiologists and PhDs and researchers. We need you so bad. So thank you for everything you do. Um, And if you ever need anything, please let me know because I want to help you. But I got to talk to her, which was just really cool. It was really, really cool. And it was funny because she was saying that she really had a lot of work to do on her fueling. Like she didn't think she took enough gels. She had a really tough time with it. And I was telling her just a little bit about the recommendations. And I like specifically said, don't try anything new on race day though. Like maybe this is for the future. And she messaged me after her race, which she crushed. She was like, I took some of your advice and I did fuel a little bit more and a little bit earlier. And I felt so good out there. So that was just really cool to see come full circle. Um, so it was just really great. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. To kind of go over my fuel plan. So, gosh, we're not even at the marathon yet, but I really wanted to give this background. You know how these are. These are usually long episodes. um, but to go over the fuel that I took. So, I carb loaded for 3 days. At least 500 grams of carbohydrate per day. Yes, very hard, but very helpful. I had a big old bagel with peanut butter and a banana and a Powerade for breakfast. I definitely did not finish the whole thing. I struggled with this, but I got down at least like 2/3 of it. So I'll call that a win. At least 100 and plus grams of carbohydrate for breakfast. And then on the buses, I had a honey stinger waffle and an applesauce pouch. And I wanted to have more, but my stomach was churning because we were very stop and go on the bus and I was getting a little bit motion sick. So I didn't force it. And then in Athletes Village, I had a whole pack of Scratch gummies. Um, and this was good. I wish I could have gotten down a little bit more. And I knew that in past years I had wished the same thing, but I think I did my best for like where my nerves were at and just like being rushed around a little bit more on the day. So just noting that here for next time, Holly, future Holly, if you're listening to this, if you can get down a little bit more, try to do it. But if not, you'll do okay. um, so that's the fuel that I took. And in Athletes Village, when me and Summer got into a porta potty line, uh they were announcing like the start of the marathon and my husband had texted me, oh my God, like Des Linden just announced her retirement, which I burst out in the porta potty line and informed everyone around me, and then they announced it like 2 minutes later on the broadcast that was happening in Athletes Village. And this was just, I was emotional about this. I'm sure other people feel the same way. It was an honor to share the course with Des on the last time she's going to run Boston as a professional athlete. Um, she's just given so much to the sport. She's such a good human and she's had such an incredible career. Um, that it made me emotional. Like I bet it made a lot of other people emotional too. And then seeing the footage of like her finishing and hugging her husband and being like bowed down to by all the American women, like it was just like it was just amazing. And I know I'm not alone when I say like we probably all can't wait to listen to Kara and Des's podcast episode on this because wow. Wow, wow. Just what a person. Congrats, Des, on an incredible career. So we heard that in the village. A lot of people clapped. I cheered. So that was really cool. And then, yeah, we basically went through the porta potty line, like stripped down our clothes and got walking. There was no time in between. And I think I was only standing in my corral for like 2 minutes before the gun went off, which has been the case every year. It's just very, very efficient, but no room for error. So if you want to actually start on time, um, so a little bit on the weather. So this Boston was my third. I would argue that I have had 3 Boston marathons with very good weather for running a good race. I've been very lucky. I'm kind of convinced at this point it's me. I'm a good luck charm. Just because this race is not known for good weather. And yet I've had 3 Bostons with fairly good weather. I would say it was a little warm, but only because I trained through a really brutal winter. It was really cold here all the time. There were no breaks. We got a ton of snow. And if I was coming off of like summer training, I don't think I would have felt like it was warm at all. And I don't think it was an excuse because I think I handled it really well. But I know a lot of people felt like it was a little bit warm who already weren't having great days. I also know the course record for women got broken by 2 minutes, and a lot of people PR'd and had awesome days. So I really don't think the weather was that bad. Yes, it felt a little warm, and I'll tell you what I did to handle that, but I don't think it was bad. I think it was pretty solid weather. Would I have liked it to be like 10 degrees cooler with clouds? Sure. But like there wasn't even really much wind. So really can't complain because 2 days before the race, it was 80 degrees. And the day before the race, there were gale force winds. So, 55 to 60 and sunny with not too much humidity for New England, I'll take it. I wore sunscreen this time. I learned from my first Boston Marathon where I got absolutely fried to wear the sunscreen. Um, I still got a little burned, but nothing like the first year. My God, that was like the worst sunburn of my life. So I was really glad about that. And by the time I got to the start, and I met a bunch of you in Athletes Village. So thank you so much for everyone who introduced themselves and said hi and said that they're a mother runner and kept getting faster after kids and that it was your first Boston or your third Boston. Like it was just so great to hear from you. And it really helped me because I was doing okay, coaching myself through the anxiety of race day. But it was helpful to have the distractions because I was trying to get to the start line without having emotionally drained myself. Because I haven't run a marathon in 2 years. So I was just trying to be back in it and do a good job. So I just really appreciated anyone who said hi or reached out. It was just I love meeting you all in person. It's the best part of my job. Um, so by the time I got to my corral and was standing there, I was standing next to like a speaker that was just blaring music. I was a little emotionally drained. I was like, okay, I just want to start this thing because I am tired. I had a good week of sleep. Like I've got nothing really to complain about other than I'm a mom now. I'm 15 months postpartum. I'm a little tired. I just like I want to get going. The logistics on this thing are hard to get to the start line, and I'm feeling that just a little bit extra today. And I'm just ready to start the dang race because I'm a little tired, like mentally and physically, but especially mentally. So I didn't notice that at the start. That I was a little tired and it felt a little warm already. So I was like, I wonder how this is going to go. Again, just don't have expectations, do your best. That's kind of where I was at the start line. It was just constant chatter of like, I'm tired. I just want this to be over. And then the other part of me going, no, it's a privilege to be here. You want to be here. You worked so hard to be here. Go do your best. You just have to stay within yourself. You don't have to do anything crazy. You just have to do your best. And then the other part would be like, but your best is really going to hurt. And then I'd be like, yeah, that's the point. Marathoning is so fun. But standing on the start line, this is probably the second time I'll cry. Right, but like the gun was about to go off and we were about to start. And the speaker that was next to me started playing Don't Stop Believin', which is like my song. My cousin who passed away when I was in high school, it was his favorite song. And I just have great memories, fond memories of him screaming the song so badly. He was not a good singer. He had a deviated septum. Like there was a lot going on with the voice, but I just have fond memories of him screaming that song. And I have a tattoo on my wrist that is a believe infinity sign, super millennial, I know, but it's meant to be don't stop believing for my cousin. A lot of people in my family have tattoos in honor of him. So whenever I hear that song, I just think of him. Yep, gonna cry. So yeah, it was just great to hear that at the start. Especially because again, I was feeling a little bit mentally tired already. So it just felt like a hug. Just like, no, you'll be fine. You have to believe that you'll be fine. And like, go do the thing, right? So, yeah, that was nice. And then it was great too, because like I also haven't heard that song in a long time. I know it's like a very popular song. Don't Stop Believing by Journey is like a very popular song. I just like hadn't heard it in a while. So it just felt nice. Um, and I definitely cried a little bit standing in the corral as we were starting to move. And then the first like several like signs I saw from like people like holding up signs like in mile 1 or 2 it said like believe, believe. And I was like, okay, I got it. Like I got it, Tyler, who's my cousin's name. I was like, okay, like I'm fine. I'll try. I'll try. I'll believe that I can do this. So it was just a good hug slash kick in the pants um, that I appreciated. So we started the race. What am I, like 30 minutes in? We got to the race. So it felt hard pretty quick. I knew going into this as my third Boston that I don't love the first half of this race. There's not as much crowd support as like the second half of the race, and you're basically going through a lot of small towns. It's really crowded at the beginning in terms of like who you're running around. And I knew I didn't really like I knew I just had a couple goals in mind. So I had, okay, I know like what the effort feels like that I'm supposed to be running downhill. Get to Wellesley was my first goal. Like you are not allowed to judge this race until you get to Wellesley because Wellesley is awesome. There is the scream tunnel. It is loud. There's crowd support. There is like some really good downhill stretches that you can get rolling on, and you're, about halfway once you get through Wellesley, which is a good landmark for the marathon. So I just had that in my mind, and that really helped because, to be honest, the effort was there. Like I felt decent. I knew it was warm. I knew that it was probably not going to get warmer. Like it was probably just going to stay this like slightly uncomfortable level of warm, which was good. But I started dumping water in my head, which I do every Boston. I started dumping water in my head at the first aid station. Um, and it was dry within like a minute because I remember thinking, oh crap, like my phone's in my sports bra and I'm just dumping water on it. Like I hope that doesn't mess up my phone. My phone was bone dry at the end of this race. So it was drying really, really, really quickly. And the reason why I do that is because it helps bring down your core temperature. Um, you want to hydrate well too, obviously in the heat to, and again, it wasn't that hot, but if you're feeling like you're overheating to, stave off dehydration, but bringing down your temperature manually like that can actually really be helpful. It's helped me so much every time I've run Boston. So I started doing that immediately because I was like, it's already feeling a little warm. I was drinking my Scratch that I had in my handheld. I had 2 scoops of Scratch strawberry lemonade in my handheld. And I started taking my gels early because again, I felt a little bit like I was rushed to get there and like I could have stood to gotten a little bit more between my breakfast and the start line. Um so I started taking, I think I took my first gel around 2 miles in. And then I started to take gels pretty much every 2 to 3 miles because it felt good. I was getting them down. I was feeling a little bit better every time I took one. And I kind of knew this would happen because I've taken, I think the first Boston Marathon I ran, I think I took 7 or 8 gels. The second Boston I ran, I took 9. And this one I took 10. So, uh, and again, I ran my fastest marathon with 9 gels. So I kind of knew that like that would probably happen again because this course is just very intense. It's a very hard course. If you ask anyone who runs the Boston Marathon, they will say that is a very hard course. Um, it's just a very intense course. It's a late start. So I think taking a little bit more like on the higher end of like the 60 to 120 grams of carbohydrate per hour that's recommended, I think that is helpful for Boston. Even if you don't always hit that in training, just know that you might benefit from hitting that on race day, and it might feel easier to do so because of how hard you're working. Because you don't ever run 26.2 miles at marathon pace in training. Like you save that for race day. So it's really hard to mimic that intensity without hurting yourself. So I kind of knew that would happen and I just went with it. So I took gels every 2 miles. I alternated between Hema Plus regular and Hema Plus caffeinated until I got to the first Morton aid stop. And I knew that I was going to be taking, I knew I was probably going to take at least 2 Mortons on course. I ended up taking 3. So I had 7 Hema Plus gels and 3 Mortons. I had almost 400 milligrams of caffeine total, which I think also might have been a PR for me. It was like a good amount of caffeine. I didn't have any caffeine before because I have a nervous stomach, so I didn't bother with that. But Yeah. So I took my first Morton calf at the first aid stop for Morton, which is around 11.8 miles, which is in Wellesley. Um, And then I basically took 3 caffeinated gels in a row through the hills to help me get through the hills because, again, I was tolerating them well. They were going down well. I was feeling better after I took them. So that was my strategy. And then I ran out of the handheld 20-ounce bottle with the scratch in it by like mile 6. It was warm. So I ditched that by mile like 7. I really contemplated whether or not I should ditch it because, again, the entire race. I was like, this feels hard. My legs feel heavy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I might blow up today in an epic way. Maybe I should slow down and fun run this. Maybe I should jog it in. Maybe I should drop out. Like all of these thoughts were happening for me, guys, like since mile 1. Like I think I was a little mentally tired, and therefore a little physically tired, even though like I never gave up and I had a really good race. So I just I held on to the handheld because I was like, maybe I should fill this with something from the aid stations in case it gets hotter or in case I slow down and I need more water. And then I ultimately decided to ditch it, which was the right decision. And ended up being fine. But as soon as I ditched it, I made sure to take a cup of Gatorade at every single aid station, if not two, and dump a cup of water on my head. And then later in the race, sometimes I would also take a cup of water, just depending on basically how successfully I could get through the aid stations and like get cups out of people's hands. So, um, that was kind of like my fuel strategy and how that went. So my legs started to feel like lead by mile 13. And again, I'm 2 years removed from the marathon. Yes, I've done really hard physical things in the meantime, like give birth and go through postpartum and train for a marathon. But I was like, do my legs usually feel this bad this early? Am I gonna be okay? And I was like, I think they do. I just got to keep going. I know you can feel bad in the marathon and then feel good again. Just keep fueling. You did carb load, so you shouldn't hit the wall. But if you have to slow down a little bit, that's okay. I think that's a really important takeaway from every marathon I've run where I didn't hit my A goal, but I still ran a really strong race and I'm really proud of it, is that you can slow down without quitting. And that means maybe your plan was to run a 7:30-minute pace and you slow down to 7:45s. That's still awesome, right? It doesn't mean you're walking. And if you do walk, it doesn't mean you can't start running again. I knew if I let myself walk, it would be really, really, really hard for me to start running again because I was wearing the carbon plated shoes, Brooks Hypernian Elites. And because when your legs feel that bad and you're walking, sometimes that feels worse. So it's like a cruel double-edged sword. So, um, I kind of just sat in the suck for this whole freaking race. Um, but my plan was, or my goals basically were make it to Wellesley. And then once I got to Wellesley, I was like, okay, now you got to make it to Newton, which starts around mile 16. And I was like, all right, now you got to make it through the Newton Hills. And on the backside of heartbreak, if you're feeling like trash, you can slow down and jog it in if you have to, or you can walk, or you can reassess. Those were kind of like my bargaining rights with myself. Um, and every Every time I looked at my watch, which was not often, I tried really not to look at my watch because I knew I was trying my hardest and that it would just discourage me or, you know, I would just not really get a ton of value from looking at my watch. But every time I decided to look at my watch was typically on like a downhill stretch. I know this course really well. So I kind of knew where some of like the bigger downhill stretches were, like going into Wellesley and then going into Newton, and then down the hills that are in Newton, especially the one on the backside of Heartbreak is like a big downhill. Um, so I'd kind of like start to feel like I was recovering a little bit and look at my watch and I'd see like 7:30, 7:25, 7:45-minute pace. And I was like, damn, that's still pretty good. I got to keep trying. So again, for mile 1 of this race, I really thought about fun running it. And every time I thought of this, and there is nothing wrong with fun running any marathon with party pacing, running easy, walk running. Maybe that is your race pace too. Like your hardest effort is walk running. Like there's nothing wrong with any of that. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm just going to run this race for fun and not have a time goal. I will have races where that is the case. However, I knew that that was not my goal for this marathon. I was like, Holly, you worked too hard. Your village worked too hard to support you and your goals. And you know that if you feel like you're throwing in the towel, you are not going to be satisfied. You are not going to be happy. And you are going to be upset for a pretty long time about mentally throwing in the towel because that doesn't feel good. So it's like you just got to keep going. My motto was make it hurt. It's supposed to hurt, make it hurt, which is hard. It's hard to show up to a marathon and be like, this is gonna hurt a lot. Got to keep making it hurt when your body is begging for you to stop. Um, so every time I looked at my watch, glanced at it, I didn't look at any mile splits this entire race, not one single mile split. Whenever I looked at my watch, though, on the downhills, when I felt a little bit more recovered and it said like 7:45 pace, 7:25 pace, I was like, dang, my legs are still doing the damn thing. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. Not allowed to throw in the towel. Got to keep trying. So that's kind of how this went. My body did feel good. I want to note that my body probably felt the healthiest it's ever felt going into a marathon, um, which was awesome. That was a really good feeling. So I just really want to shout out my crew, my physical therapist, especially uh, Jess Hirschgott, Main Ascent. You've all seen me tag her. She's amazing. Has kept me so healthy. My coach Kim, who knows how to keep her athletes healthy, especially if they tend to push themselves really hard, into injury territory. She knows exactly how to keep her athletes healthy, and she's done that for me so many times while still pushing me really hard. My friends, you guys, my husband, my parents, just everyone who's helped keep me healthy. My primary care physician, I love her. She texted me, good luck for your race. Everyone find yourselves a doctor who cares about you enough to text you good luck before your marathon. What a fabulous person. Um, but my body felt really good. I'm really sore post race because of how early my legs felt like lead and how hard I continued to push anyway. Um, and my left side's a little extra crunchy and sore because the roads were a little bit banked and I had trouble getting off of the bank because I kept using the aid stations on the right side. So, I mean, my left side kind of felt a little bit like it was like whining the whole time, but normal marathon stuff for me, like I did feel really good despite feeling bad. If that makes sense. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. Um, so taking gels every 2 miles, pretty much the whole race. I picked up more Mortons at, I think every Morton stop except for the last one because I had picked up two at one of them. So I was like, I'm good. I don't need to carry more gels. And the last 2 miles or so, once I was making it into Boston, and I was slowing down a little bit, but honestly, not much. I slowed down over the hills because I knew I had to in order to have any potential of having a good experience in the last 10K. But honestly, I only slowed down on the hills um, because there were hills. It still hurt a lot. It wasn't like I was easy running it. So the last 2 miles, I looked at my watch. I was like, you can look at your watch at mile 24, like the total time and see where you're at. Cause I honestly had no idea. I didn't know if I didn't think I was PRing. But I wasn't sure if I was like BQing, like if I was over 3:30, like I had no idea where I was. Um, I looked down at my watch, with 2 miles to go and I saw that had I not run extra, I somehow ran 26.7 miles, but had I not run extra, I probably would have BQ'd. So that's a bummer, but oh well. Um, and I was just really blown away by that. I was really blown away by how well I was doing, despite how bad I felt. And how, like, the past two times I've run the Boston Marathon, I've really closed the last 10K, like, dropped the hammer, like, fastest miles of the entire race, and felt strong doing it. I did not feel that way this time. I felt like I was holding on for dear life, whenever I was able to surge on the downhills, I was very pleasantly surprised by that ability because my legs felt like they were going to fall off. Aerobically, I felt okay. Mentally, I felt exhausted and just ready to be done. Um, so I knew that I was going slower than like I knew I wasn't dropping the hammer in this last 10K, but I was pleasantly surprised that I was not slowing down a lot either compared to the first half of the race. Um, so I knew that I wasn't going to PR. I knew that just by doing my, mile 24 runner math, that even if I was able to drop the hammer in the last 2 miles, I would probably miss a BQ with the new time standards. Um, but I still gave it my all. And I know I did because I started making the ugly, like, exasperated, like, out of breath, gritty noises, like with 2 miles to go, because I would do these little surges. Like it was to the point where I had a lot of runners around me being like, "You got this, good job, like stay with it." And honestly, that was really helpful to hear. It just, again, I really appreciated that. So if you were any of those runners who felt like you were around a runner who was blowing a gasket in the last 2 miles, thank you. Thank you for your encouragement because it did help. I was like, you're right. I do got this. So the last 2 miles, I just kept gutting myself essentially. I made ugly noises. I tried to latch on to people, and I knew that a BQ was unlikely, a PR was not happening, but that I could give it everything I got and be damn proud of this race. So, and also the quicker you run, the quicker it's over. There was that too. So, when I finally made the right turn on Hereford, which the whole time I was like, where's that Sitgo sign? Because you see the Sitgo sign at a mile to go. And then I was like, okay, where's that right turn on Hereford? I'm dying. Made the right turn on Hereford and then made the left turn on Boylston. And as I turned onto Boylston, I said, Boylston out loud, and tried to sprint, but I mean, I did. It was mile 26 was my fastest mile of the whole marathon, which is why fueling really well and carb loading works because I still have that in me despite my legs feeling like they went through a meat grinder since mile like 13 of that race. And I did my best to get down Boylston. Um, I did not raise the roof like I had the first time I ran Boston, where I was feeling awesome on Boylston and was like trying to hype the crowd around me. I did not feel like I was gutting myself for a PR, which is how I felt the last time I ran it. I just felt like, let's just go leave it all out there because you're not going to be satisfied if you don't leave it all out there, especially on Boylston. The other really cool thing about the last probably mile and a half of this race is that, is his name Matt James, the guy from The Bachelor who ran New York City with Shalane that one year. He passed me. I think at mile 25, he was wearing like a blue like avatar tail. And I knew it was him because he's so tall and he's like high-fiving everyone. Everyone's like the spectators are all freaking out. So I was like, that's him. Um, so I crossed the finish line very shortly after him, which was just cool. One of my clients ran the Tokyo Marathon this year, and she actually ran Boston too, and she did so well at both of those races. But she ran Tokyo this year and crossed the finish line with Harry Styles. So I was like, oh, I had my celebrity finish moment at this race. Do I kind of wish it was Harry Styles? Of course, because I just know his music. But I'll take Matt James too. It was cool, cool story. Um, so I crossed the finish line, and I think I said I dropped all the F-bombs, I think, for the next 20 minutes walking away from that finish line because I left it all out there. It was really hard. It was really hard to commit to train for a marathon postpartum with a lot of unknowns, to go through a lot of hard times, adjusting to being a mom and a business owner and all of that good stuff, to have a hard day for mile one, but to gut it out anyway, and to miss some of my goals, but to still have my third fastest marathon out of 9 marathons at 15 months postpartum on a bad quote unquote day. Like I'm proud of that. Um, we, I find we don't often, we learn stuff from our PR races, but I think we learn the most from the ones that aren't perfect. I've had a couple races like this in the past where I could tell early on that it was just going to be a harder day. The second time I ran the Philadelphia Marathon being one of those, I missed a BQ by a couple minutes on that day. And then also the Wine Glass Marathon, which again, I gutted tooth and nail for every second of that race. And that is the race that got me into the Boston Marathon. So like fight for every second. Um, and this one. I think we learn the most from these. We know that it can feel really bad early on, and you can do the things that scientifically we know work, like carb loading and fueling and hydrating and dumping water on your head and trying to stay within yourself and having good positive self-talk and chunking up the race, all the psychology tools. We can do all that stuff. Um, and still have a really good outcome, even if it's not perfect. And I think it's really important to have those days. And I was due for one of those days. I had a couple marathon PRs in a row. So I was not surprised to have one of those days. Um, and like looking back on my build up and my fitness, I mean, I was dropping some of the best workouts of my marathon career, but again, by the end of my training, when they were feeling like I got them done, but not like they were poppy and fresh like they had been previous marathon training cycles, I kind of had a feeling. I was like, if this were any other marathon, I'd probably go crush it and have a PR, but this is Boston. And if you have any weaknesses, they're going to come out because you can't hide on this course. It is very hard. The logistics are very hard. It is a big race with a lot going on. So if you have any like mental health fatigue, it's just going to get amplified a little bit because it's hard. You have to take a bus to get to the start line. There's so many people, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And then you got to run a marathon on a really tough course. So I wasn't really surprised. I kind of thought that a sub 3:30 would be very realistic for me. That a PR could be realistic on like a perfect day. And that maybe a BQ might happen, but I wasn't sure. And again, like at 26.2 miles on my watch, at least, like I would have gotten a BQ. So like I do think it was well within my expectations of myself. Um, so yeah, just I learned a lot. I learned a lot from this day. I especially learned that, and I already knew this, but I learned that, yeah, parents, especially moms who run, are really, really tough because it's really hard. It's harder to do everything in training and performance when you are a mom, and you get tougher, so you just get it done. So I was just really, really proud of this one. Really proud of this one. Especially that my last mile was my fastest mile at a 7:21. Like that was good. Good job, Holly. But to be honest, am of course like a little bit disappointed that I can't say Boston qualified at this race. Despite the standards dropping, any other year it would have been a BQ. But I'm really relieved, to be honest, that I am set free from the Boston Marathon hamster wheel. I know that if I requalified, I would reapply, and that if I got in, I would run it again. And I think that would be fine. And I think I could be happy doing that. And I know that I will be back. But I am also very excited to run some different races. That maybe are a little bit easier logistically in terms of getting to the start line, that have courses that maybe are a little bit more how do I want to put this? Tame. um and just to have a little bit less pressure. I'm excited. I'm excited for that. And I know a lot of people, some people have asked me like, "Oh, are you going to try to like BQ for 2026 like with a fall marathon?" No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm very satisfied with this experience. I need to spend some time focusing on other things. We've got a lot of house projects going on. We got some travel coming up, some weddings. Like I have other stuff that I want to be focusing on and other distances that I think and strength and all of that I think focusing on that will be really helpful for me health wise and just longevity in the sport wise. So no, that's not my plan. Will I be back at Boston one day? Absolutely. I will try my hardest to be back at Boston one day as a runner because It's an hour from me. It's a marathon major. It's my favorite marathon. It's amazing and a privilege. It is a privilege to be there in any capacity. And also, I am excited to do something different. I think it'll be good for me. So, no, not going to try to BQ this fall. Um, but I hope that this recap was helpful. I tried to incorporate as much as I could. Sorry, it was just like a stream of consciousness and that I cried a couple times. Um, but yeah, all honest, authentic me. But yeah, learned a lot from this one. Super proud of this one. Thank you to all the volunteers. Couldn't do this without you. I'm always so blown away by the logistics and volunteers and organization of this race. Um, I think a lot of the feedback from previous years was heard. The medals are beautiful. That I know was a complaint last year. The security on course was amazing. There, was a lot of support for various athletes. There was a more concrete finishing cutoff time that I know is probably still controversial, but I just really, really appreciate the volunteers and all the organization and thought and love and passion that goes into organizing this event. I have had such good experiences at Boston, even if it's a hard day. Um, and I know I can't imagine, how hard it is to organize this race, and every time I'm on the bus going from Boston to Hopkinton, I am so glad that it is not my job to organize this race, but that there are people who want to do it and keep doing it over and over again. So thank you so much to all the volunteers. Thank you so much to everyone who cheered. The spectators this year were on fire. There was so much more crowd support than the last time I ran it because probably the weather was a lot nicer for spectators, and that helped a ton. Every time I got into a town where the spectators were like screaming, I was like, "Oh, this is great." um so it took me out of the pain cave even if only briefly. And I really appreciated that. Thank you to everyone who said hi, who sent me messages of good luck, of have fun, of good job, congratulations. It's it means so much. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate it. And I'll try to keep sharing this whole running journey. I'm always just like humbled that you want to hear about my running journey because my job is to help all of you with your running journeys. So I hope in some way hearing about mine is helpful, and I'll continue to show up on here and provide you with good nutrition, fueling content. Until next time, happy running.